Amazing transformation, how one waitress's Japanese greeting revealed the billionaire's hidden heartache. Mia wiped down the counter at Joe's diner, the familiar buzz of conversation settling into a comforting rhythm. It was the kind of place where everyone knew her name, but few knew of the relentless weight she bore on her shoulders. With long shifts blending into exhaustion, her dreams of a brighter future felt like distant stars, especially when her mother's medical bills piled up and the threat of eviction loomed over their heads. She longed for freedom, for the sweet taste of stability, for a life where she didn't have to make impossible choices between groceries and medication. It was during a slow afternoon, as the sun filtered through the diner's cracked windowpanes, that James walked in. He looked out of place, a disheveled man in an expensive suit, a world of troubles etched into his furrowed brow. Mia approached him, her warm smile a natural reflex, and greeted him in Japanese, a phrase that her late grandfather once cherished. To her surprise, his eyes flickered. This soft, inviolable greeting cracked the hard shell around his heart. Thank you," he muttered, momentarily shaken. His blank gaze met hers, and she felt a pull. He began to speak, hesitant at first but soon sharing pieces of his life punctuated by corporate battles and a haunting familial legacy. Beneath the layers of wealth and expectation, he revealed a life stifled by duty, yearning for the paintbrush that had long been hidden, but inside Mia, a storm was brewing. Each shared moment with James stirred up mixed emotions. Was he just a distraction from her realities? His refined world felt light years away from the shadows of debt and desperation that clung to her. The growing friendship blurred the lines between hope and obligation, pulling her deeper into dilemmas she couldn't ignore. With each cup of coffee they shared, the weight of her responsibilities pressed harder against her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day of the showcase began tinged with a bittersweet urgency. Mia's heart raced. Would sharing their stories be a way to breathe life into her frozen dreams, or would it expose her family's struggles to the world? Each brushstroke of James's paintings told a story of both beauty and pain, echoing the battles she and her own family faced. Could this be a way forward, or a disastrous misstep? Uncertainty coiled in her stomach, moments of hope tangled with fears of what could happen next. As the showcase drew near, Mia stumbled upon an old family heirloom, something that could either fortify her bond with James or sever ties completely. Its discovery echoed with possibility but weighed heavily with consequences. She stood at a precipice, the air thick with tension, knowing this secret could shift the very foundation of both their realities. With every heartbeat marking time until the event, Mia's mind raced. In a world defined by complexities and contrasts, she questioned whether they were meant to connect or if their paths were simply destined to diverge, leaving her dreams further out of reach. The looming choice pushed her closer to the edge, rendering the future uncertain and fraught with danger. Would she dare to embrace the chaos of their intertwined lives, or would self-preservation pull her backward? The night of the showcase had arrived, draping the diner in an unusual air of excitement mixed with trepidation. Mia stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, sorting through an array of thoughts that flitted through her mind like the flickering lights of an old film reel. The heirloom lay cradled in her palm, its weight both comforting and burdensome. Would revealing it deepen her connection with James, or would it push him away? The stakes felt impossibly high, yet time was slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. Her reflection stared back at her, the unease shadowing her determined gaze. Deciding to do this, she took a deep breath as though it could fill her with clarity. What about her own story, the one she had kept buried? Wasn't this her chance to reclaim her narrative, to weave her struggles into something powerful? If James could confront the suffocating weight of his expectations, perhaps she could too. The diner was already transformed, adorned with blue lights that danced off the walls like the dreams she wished to pursue. Coffee machines bubbled and steam hissed as patrons spilled in, each eager to witness the transformation inspired by James's artistry. Mia found herself caught in the tides of energy anticipation washed over her, but it was quickly subverted by the undercurrent of insecurity. "Hey, you ready?" James's voice cut through the noise, pulling her focus back to the moment. His presence felt surreal, strikingly vibrant against the backdrop of her everyday life. As he smiled, the corners of his mouth lifting with genuine warmth, she felt a flutter in her chest. He wore his own burdens lightly but held an intensity that hinted at unspoken struggles. "Yeah, you know, it's just nerve-wracking," she admitted, both to him and herself. Could she really step into a world of vulnerability, letting people in on the chaos of her life? He nodded, understanding etched into his features. "You can't take flight without facing the storm first. This is your moment too." Those words settled in her mind, a murmur of encouragement that both terrified and empowered her. But just as her half-formed resolve began to solidify, she caught sight of the diner's entrance. A shadow loomed, a familiar face, her landlord, Ralph, edging cautiously into the lively atmosphere. His presence twisted a knife in her gut. It was a divided heart. She desperately wanted to leave her struggles behind, yet they were an inescapable part of her reality. As she processed the convergence of her worlds, her pulse quickened. Would Ralph disrupt this fragile moment? "Are you okay?" James's voice now held a sharper edge, and it brought her back from the brink of anxiety. The determination flickered within her again. Keeping her family unity intact was also a form of resistance. She pushed her shoulders back, facing Ralph with a newfound fierce determination. Perhaps this showcase wasn't just about their art or their interaction, it was also about her standing her ground, about daring to confront the life that threatened to overwhelm her. There was power and visibility, in the act of demanding respect for herself and her family. As the evening unfolded, she felt the burgeoning strength inside her. She was ready to speak her truth and show the world that she was more than just the waitress behind the counter. The influence of James and the heirloom she clutched felt like her guiding lights through a storm. But as she prepared to make her entrance, her mind flashed back to every sacrifice her family had made, a stark reminder of what was at stake. Would her revelation empower her, or push James away forever? The moment lingered before her, pregnant with possibility. The stage was set, and now, she had to step into the light, allowing herself to be seen. Could this leap of faith bind her to James or shatter the fragile connection they had forged? Only time would reveal the answer, pulsing with anticipation and dread. As she stepped forward, the path seemed tangled and unsure, leading them both deeper into the unknown. The stage felt surreal as Mia took her first step into the spotlight. The warm glow of the blue lights washed over her, and the din of chatter faded into a soft hum, punctuated by her racing heart. She could feel the heirloom's weight pressing against her palm, a reassuring reminder of her family and the legacy she carried. The familiar songs in the diner transformed into an uncertain soundtrack, each note echoing the unvarnished truth of her existence. She felt James's presence behind her, an unseen anchor in a chaotic sea. His whispered encouragements echoed in her mind, but there was a growing tension curling around the edges of her resolve. Would she have the strength to rip open old wounds for a chance at connection, or would her vulnerability lead to despair? As she cleared her throat, the first words slipped out, tentative and shaky. "Thank you all for being here tonight." Each utterance felt like a tightrope walk, precarious yet exhilarating. The crowd responded with a warm clap, a brief buoying wave in the ocean of anxiety swirling inside her. Taking a deep breath, she continued, "I've always been a bit of an outsider. Well, a lot of an outsider." The honesty was stark, but it felt liberating to reclaim that part of herself that had shied away from public acknowledgement. "I'm a waitress, a dreamer, and a product of my own barriers. But tonight, I want to share something deeply personal." With every syllable, she felt a bond within the crowd, a recognition of shared struggles, mirrored hopes. Just as the weight of her truth began to settle, Ralph's disapproving gaze landed squarely on her, a flicker of judgment creeping across his face. It sent a chill through her, as if the air had been sucked from the room. She wasn't just sharing her narrative, she was battling perceptions, both internal and external. Shifting her stance, she straightened her back, tapping into that burgeoning strength she decultivated. "This heirloom," she said, raising the object just enough to catch the light, "isn't just a piece of jewelry. It symbolizes my family's sacrifices and the stories embedded in it. My mother wore it through her struggles, and I've kept it close, hoping to forge my own path." Was her resolution faltering? Every word felt like a small breakthrough, but Ralph's gaze stung like a harsh slap. Would he exploit her vulnerability, drawing attention to her past failures? Silencing that anxiety, she continued, "Today, I stand here not just as a waitress but as a storyteller, reclaiming my narrative and acknowledging where I came from." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. The freedom she longed for was pulsating just beyond her grasp, vibrant and real. With renewed determination, she locked eyes with James. Confidence surged through her. "We're all made of stories, right? Stories that shape us, that bind us. I'm here not just to show you my art but to encourage all of us to step into our own truths. Together, we can transform those truths into something beautiful." The audience reacted, clapping louder, and for a moment, her nerves melted under the warmth of their connection. She felt seen, the invisible barriers between them crumbling like dust, the fear of judgment fading into the background. But just as a sense of elation began to claim her, Ralph rose from his seat, cutting through the atmosphere like a knife. "You shouldn't be using a family heirloom as a prop for your pity party," he spat, mocking laughter echoing in the silence that followed. The word stung, a harsh reminder of the weight her personal life carried. And yet, within the sting grew a solid ember of defiance. She wasn't about to let him dampen the fire she had ignited. As the laughter echoed, she caught James's supportive gaze again, an invitation to respond. Her heart thundered in her ears. Would she let Ralph's words dictate the moment, or would she claim her power, however fragile it felt? Standing tall, she readied herself for battle. This confrontation was her proving ground. And just as she prepared to respond, a flood of resolve surged through her. Would she rise, or would she falter? The next words she spoke could either bind her to her truth or sever her growing connection with James forever. The room grew silent, anticipation filling the air thick with tension. Would she harness her courage and reclaim the narrative, or would Ralph's taunt overshadow her moment? Mia felt as if the world had narrowed down to Ralph and her, the relentless drum of her heartbeat filling her ears. His derision sliced through the atmosphere, spreading a chill that dared her to shrink back into her shell. Yet the laughter, those mocking, scornful chuckles had kindled something fierce within her. She wasn't just standing up for herself, she was standing up for every quiet voice that had ever been belittled. "Ralph," she began, each word carefully measured, an arrow aimed directly at his arrogance. "You may see this heirloom as a prop, but it represents something far greater than your narrow view. It embodies the struggles of women like my mother, whose choices were often dismissed and belittled, just as you've chosen to dismiss me." Her voice grew steadier as she welcomed the flood of feeling surging through her. This was not merely a response, it was a reclamation, surrounded by a sea of faces, some curious, others supportive. She felt her narrative shift. Could her truth truly embolden others? Inspiration coursed through her like electricity, sparking a truth she had often buried. Her resilience was her strength. Ralph scowled, intent on undermining her spirit. "You think that just because you're standing on a stage, you're becoming something? It's pathetic. Pathetic is pretending to be a critic while knowing nothing of the journey that brought me here," Mia shot back, exhaustion and raw honesty fueling her words. She sensed a shift in energy within the crowd, a collective breath held in suspense. Glimmers of approval sparked in some eyes, while others remained locked in judgment. The clarity she had long sought beckoned. She wasn't merely scrapping to push back against Ralph. She was daring to show her heart. In that moment, James approached her with quiet confidence. "Mia," he called softly. "Your story is more powerful than anyone's opinion. Let them see your light." His words wrapped around her like an embrace, invigorating her resolve, and she realized it was this understanding that had begun to transform her relationship with him, evolving from simple admiration to a blossoming connection built on authenticity. "Thank you," she said, glancing at James, before focusing back on the audience. "I spent so long hiding, afraid that the parts of me I considered flaws would be the very things to turn you away. But the reality is, vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength. It's proof that we're alive and fighting. Each of us carries burdens that define our stories, woven together in a tapestry of hardship, laughter, and love." The ripple of connection among the audience deepened. She could almost hear them questioning their own narratives. Were they stepping into their truths, or were they remaining static, bottling up fears as she once had? Taking a breath, she added, "Tonight, I choose to share my truth not as a plea for sympathy, but as a reminder for all of us to embrace our histories if we want to forge ahead. I am more than a waitress, more than the struggles I've faced. I am a storyteller. A hope teller. Just like you. And if I can stand here, sharing my stories, then you can too." Applause broke out, swelling like a tide, washing over her in waves. Even Ralph seemed momentarily caught off guard. In that instant, she flickered between nerves and a profound sense of victory. Then, as the crowd's cheers reached a crescendo, Ralph's voice rasped through the applause. "You think this will change anything? You'll always be just a waitress." Mia's stomach twisted, a knot of anger mingling with determination. The fight was not over. Opening up had merely opened the door for her true fight. His contempt was a banquet of validation for her journey, framed by rejection. She gathered the pieces. "That may be true, Ralph, but so much more depends on how I define myself, and so much more lies ahead. Your interference won't steal my narrative. And it won't control my future." As the words echoed in the space, something shifted deeply within her. Fear and uncertainty slowly morphed into a seed of empowerment, grounded and ready to flourish. She relished each clapping hand and knowing smile from the crowd, aware that against this backdrop of support and belittlement, her path would only grow brighter. Yet amidst the jubilation, an unsettling thought crept in. If confronting Ralph was merely one layer of her growth, what awaited her beyond tonight's performance? The stakes were higher than she realized, and each step deeper into her truth turned the world into an unpredictable landscape. Tomorrow loomed like an unfinished chapter, hiding new challenges and revelations ready to unravel. What would happen if the true test of her growth lay not just in confronting Ralph, but in understanding the complexities of her burgeoning relationship with James? The thought left a sharp sensation in her gut, beckoning her to explore uncharted emotional territories, where the next confrontation might redefine everything she had dared to claim. Mia awoke the next morning to a cacophony of thoughts jumbled in her mind. The applause still echoed faintly, mingling with the harsh buzzing of the alarm clock. She could still feel the warmth of the stage lights and the rush of adrenaline pulsing through her veins. But as sunlight streamed through her window, reality settled heavily upon her, accompanied by the murky uncertainty of what came next. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, taking a moment to breathe deeply, reminding herself that vulnerability was now her compass. Yet, beneath that understanding simmered apprehension. What did it mean to truly embrace her identity? Would the strength she had displayed last night survive the daylight scrutiny of her everyday life? Mia made her way to the cafe, the familiar route feeling different somehow, as if she were seeing her surroundings through a renewed lens. The cafe buzzed as usual with morning patrons, but today, as she poured coffee and prepared pastries, she felt an almost electric charge in the air. Conversations floated around her, snippets of laughter, and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee wrapped around her like a warm blanket. When James walked in, with sunlight streaming through the door behind him, he momentarily captured everyone's attention. The soft smile he offered made her heart race, steering her away from the lingering shadows of self-doubt. Still, their growing connection felt complex. Was she willing to let herself be vulnerable with him? The thought struck her as both intoxicating and terrifying. "Morning, Mia," he said, sliding into a booth by the window, his voice smooth and warm. "You were incredible last night. I think you inspired a lot of people. Even Ralph." "Thanks," James, she replied, trying to mask the flutter of nerves threatening to break free. I didn't expect that sort of change. You've got to lean into it, you know. Own it. You carry more strength than you realize, he encouraged, his eyes glinting with intrigue. How do you feel today? Her breath caught momentarily. Kind of like I opened a door to a room I didn't know existed, and I can't quite see how big the space is, she confessed, surprise spilling from her lips. I thought confronting Ralph would be the hardest part, but I was just setting the stage for something else. James nodded thoughtfully. Navigating through the unknown can be a bit daunting. What's the first step out of that door? Facing myself? She mused, disbelief creeping in. What if I can't, or worse, what if I fail? Failure is just another name for growth, he said, leaning forward, his expression earnest. You can't let fear dictate your choices. You know this. You've already taken the most crucial leap. As he spoke, she felt a stirring within her. It was terrifying and exhilarating to consider that each moment she hesitated was a choice made in the service of her old self, the self that feared judgment and rejection. You're right, she murmured, the words firming like clay molding into shape. I can't simply slip back into complacency. I have to face the next challenge head-on. James smiled, his expression encouraging. Then why not start here? Let's set some goals together. It's the perfect time to channel all that new energy you found. His eyes lit up with an enthusiasm that both comforted and pushed her. The prospect of sharing her ambitions ignited more apprehension. What if she revealed her dreams only to let them slip into failure? But Mia sensed that she could either let fear paralyze her or use it as a catalyst for growth. Okay, she relented, realizing that his support amplified her own aspirations. Let's do it. A quiet determination replaced her earlier unease. They spent the next hour charting out her aspirations and discussing her writing. The feelings that had once muddled her mind now crystallized into sharper focus, yet, as she glanced at the clock, she felt an innate twinge of anxiety. What awaited beyond this newfound hope? The street seemed to shimmer with possibilities, laced with the realization that the confrontation with Ralph might only be the beginning. The real challenge lay in how she would engage with the path ahead, and how she would articulate her goals to James without falling prey to old insecurities. The cafe faded into the background as she emerged into the world outside, where the sun drenched her in light but shadowed her thoughts with uncertainty. She was driven by a single question: could she navigate a deeper relationship with James while dismantling her lingering fears of inadequacy? Determined yet apprehensive, she stepped forward into a day filled with potential, unaware that the next corner would lead to a revelation about herself she had long ignored. Mia stood at the edge of the sidewalk, sunlight pouring down like a blessing or a curse. The pulse of potential was evident on every block, but it was overshadowed by the echoes of her fears. With each step, she grappled with her self-doubt, the tantalizing anxiety of what lay ahead filling her with both dread and excitement. The cafe, now behind her, had been a cocoon, a safe haven where she could chart her path with James. But outside, the world felt expansive yet daunting, filled with people who seemed determined, driven by purpose. She caught herself speculating over their lives, wondering if they ever felt as lost as she did, or if they possessed unwavering confidence to seize every opportunity. Her thoughts drifted back to the conversation with James. Setting goals felt invigorating, yet daunting. What if her aspirations weren't worthy of cultivation? What if exposing them only laid her vulnerability bare to ridicule? She took a deep breath, as if replenishing her resolve. Perhaps today was not just about external growth. Maybe it was time to turn inward. She decided to meet Ralph again, her heart racing at the mere thought. Confrontation was inevitable, it had settled itself deep within her psyche since last night. Was it worth it? Or would it undo the fragile sense of empowerment she had cultivated? As she crossed the street, the gust of wind rustled her hair, a gentle reminder of nature's chaos. She envisioned the interaction with Ralph not as a battle but rather as a conversation, a chance to reclaim her narrative. With each step, her resolve grew bolder. Mia reached her favorite spot by the lake, where she often retreated when burdened by the world. She sat upon the grass, savoring the gentle ripples against the shoreline, seeking clarity amidst tumultuous thoughts. The lake, silent and reflective, mirrored her inner landscape. Would she reflect strength or fear? As she pondered, the possibility of failure persisted, intertwining itself with the vision of success. But that contradiction of desire entwined with doubt had begun to take on a new light. Perhaps failure wouldn't mark the end, perhaps it could be the first step toward understanding her limits. Her past kept clawing at her, urging her to remain cautious, to not step too far away from safety. But safety had become synonymous with stagnation. It was time to balance on the precipice between fear and courage. Mia rose, a spark igniting within. Wasn't the fear of confronting Ralph less daunting than the specter of becoming someone who never faced her truths? She summoned her determination and imagined speaking to Ralph, her voice steady, her words unfiltered. Each interaction would become a brushstroke in the portrait of her self-identity she was struggling to paint. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows, she could see her future sprawling ahead, painted in colors she had long neglected. But there was still something profound and nagging tugging at her heart, a question lingering that refused to settle. Was she allowing the anticipation of confronting Ralph to propel her forward, or was she clinging to that confrontational moment as a crutch to avoid fully acknowledging her deeper potential? With every fiber of her being, she resolved to dismantle her insecurities, promising herself a clear path forward. As she walked away from the lake, she marveled at how simple realizations had begun to shape her narrative. But the deeper she ventured into her emotional toolbox, the more she feared the chaos hidden beneath. Was she ready to confront not only Ralph but also the deeper layers of herself she hadn't yet dared to explore? The day held promises, but it also whispered of uncharted territory ahead, where her confrontation might unravel secrets she had long suppressed. Could she endure the unfolding truth, standing in her own storm? With her heart pounding, she stepped onto the path where her resolutions twisted into a challenge she could no longer ignore. Mia inhaled deeply, her breath steadying her racing heart. With each stride toward Ralph's office, the significance of the impending confrontation solidified. The sharp lines of the building, standing tall against the sky, mirrored the urgency pulsating within her. Would Ralph dismiss her? Would he even recognize the weight that his words had held over her? As she turned the final corner, the office lobby stretched before her, bathed in sterile light that felt almost suffocating. She paused, glancing at her reflection in the glass doors. Did confidence truly live in her bones when she appeared so fragile on the outside? She could feel the heaviness of fear settle at the base of her throat, but the resolve from the lake still lingered. The soft whispers of self-doubt urged her to retreat. Yet she understood that stepping back would be giving Ralph and her past the power over her narrative once more. Pushing through the door, she forced herself not to look back. The receptionist glanced up, surprise flickering in her eyes upon seeing Mia. "Are you here to see Ralph?" "Yes," she managed, her voice firm despite the tremor beneath. The receptionist gestured for her to take a seat, and Mia settled in. Time felt elastic, every tick of the clock amplifying her internal chaos. She channeled her thoughts, constructing her approach like an artist defining strokes on a canvas. Mia's mind raced through the various scenarios that could unfold. Would Ralph be hostile? Dismissive? Or perhaps he'd be indifferent, a man too absorbed in his own reality to acknowledge her pain? She wrestled with her feelings, each potential outcome pulling her in different directions. After what felt like an eternity, a tall figure emerged from the hallway. Ralph's posture was confident, his expression transitioning from surprise to curiosity when he spotted her. "Mia. What brings you here?" The words came rushing forth without hesitation. "I wanted to talk about our last interaction. Your criticism, it stung, and I've reflected on it," she said, the boldness of her admission surprising even herself. Ralph arched an eyebrow, his expression an unfamiliar blend of bemusement and intrigue. "You're here to confront me?" Most people would avoid it. A pulse of bravery surged through her, tempered by a hint of uncertainty. "Avoidance has only prolonged my feelings of inadequacy." I want to reclaim my narrative no longer defined by others' judgments. He nodded slowly, as if processing her words. You really think a conversation would change anything? Why not? She pressed, her passion stirring as she spoke. I understand the power you wield in your words, but I will not let them shape my worth anymore. If nothing else, I am learning from the experience. Ralph's eyes narrowed slightly, the challenge igniting a flicker of respect. Interesting perspective, Mia. But you must know that the corporate world is often unforgiving. She leaned forward, heart racing. And that's exactly why I need to confront it. To find out what I'm truly capable of outside my safety zone. To know that my aspirations are valid, not judged by anyone but myself. I need to accept failures as learning points, not dead ends. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. This interaction felt like a test of wills. Vocational uncertainty was palpable, but for Mia, something had crystallized during the confrontation. The revelation was clear: she had to evolve her mindset, not merely based on Ralph's insidious opinions but on her evolving self-belief. Ralph finally broke the silence, his voice softer than before. You might come to regret this decision. The warning hung in the air, but a newfound confidence filled Mia. Or I might find clarity. All I need is to take this step. As she left his office, a weight had lifted, but a fresh anxiety surged. Could her courage transform the landscape of her professional journey? Each interaction could indeed paint a larger picture of who she was becoming. But as she found herself outside, the sun poised at the horizon, she wondered, was confronting Ralph the beginning or just a bridge to deeper challenges ahead? Would she have the fortitude to push further into the unknown pathways of her true potential? Mia took a deep breath, accepting that the road ahead was laden with uncertainty. One thing became clear: she must tread carefully, for she was on the brink of a discovery that might alter everything she thought she knew about herself. The question lingered hauntingly: what would she unearth next? Mia walked out into the blistering afternoon sun, the warmth hitting her like a soft embrace. Each step felt lighter, infused with the adrenaline of her confrontation with Ralph. Yet, despite the momentary relief, a gnawing unease lingered in her chest. Her heart had raced with both fear and exhilaration, and now, as the newness of her bravery settled in, doubts crept back. What if Ralph was right? What if the corporate world truly was as unforgiving as he claimed? Those thoughts spun within her, both compelling and paralyzing. She needed to harness them rather than let them drown her. With determination, she reached for her phone and glanced at her reflection in the glass of a nearby cafe. No more running, she murmured to herself. The reflection stared back, a woman becoming more than just a shadow of her former self. Mia made her way toward the bustling co-working space where she had spent countless afternoons absorbed in work, though always feeling like she was trying to play catch-up. Today, however, she was not merely going to clock in hours, she needed to pivot her energy toward empowerment. She envisioned crafting a strategy for her development, a plan that would transform her aspirations into action. Settling into a corner table, the din of conversations buzzed around her, an orchestra of ambition, creativity, and collaboration. She opened her laptop and pulled up her notes from the past weeks. First on her list of priorities, seek a mentor. She needed guidance to navigate the treacherous waters of her industry, a seasoned ally who could offer insights and perspectives. As she typed, a flicker of doubt emerged. Would anyone take her seriously? After all, she had spent years blending into the background. Yet, a burgeoning belief whispered that it was time to reach out, that her narrative could shift if she dared to ask for help. She zeroed in on a few names and immediate nerves bubbled up. Who should she choose? Each name came with its own set of apprehensions. Would they see her potential, or just the waitress who had blended coffee too many times? Snapping herself out of this spiral of insecurity, Mia reminded herself of the power flushed through her veins after confronting Ralph. If she could take such a bold step, reaching out would be the next brace of courage necessary for her ascent. Next, she needed to overcome another hurdle. Instead of churning out presentations just to meet expectations, she would focus on projects that inspired her. Mia opened a new tab and began drafting a proposal for a project aimed at improving sustainability practices in her company. This was her lane, her spark, and she felt the idea solidifying before her, but just as quickly as excitement surged, doubt clawed back. What if her project didn't get approved? What if it was dismissed as naive or insignificant? Shaking her head, she realized this was the harsh reality of her journey. Not every effort would be accepted. What mattered was persistence. As hours passed, she drafted, revised, and articulated her ideas. Each word became an embodiment of her newfound strength. Time felt like a vivid whirlwind, once rushed, now purposeful. Moments of reflection became opportunities to understand not just the content but the very essence of what she wanted to morph into a professional who was not just seen but heard. Finally, when she stepped away from her computer, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. But a new tension gripped her thoughts. What if Ralph's warning loomed true? She couldn't discard the thought that setting herself on this new path might further provoke challenges. Determined, Mia closed her laptop, envisioning the journey ahead. The echo of Ralph's challenge remained, but this time she wouldn't shun it, she would embrace it. Her mind raced with possibilities, daunting yet exhilarating. Who would she encounter next? What lessons awaited her? Making her way home, a thought danced at the threshold of her mind. Could her transformation ignite the spark of change in others too? And as she stepped through her front door, a ripple of uncertainty mixed with hope lingered in the air. This was only the beginning, but for her, the time had come not merely to work. She was ready to confront everything that lay uncharted. What audacity would she wield next? Mia awoke the following morning with purpose screaming through her veins. The sunlight poured in, invigorating her spirit as she rolled out of bed. Today was pivotal. It represented the dawning of her new identity, one she meticulously began to carve for herself. She was not merely a waitress, she was a force in the making, ready to navigate the currents of the corporate world. After a quick shower, she stood before the mirror, wardrobe choices swirling in her mind. She needed to project confidence and capability. Each piece of clothing she slid on had to be armor against self-doubt. Settling on a tailored blazer and simple but chic trousers, she felt the transformation outer reflect her inner resolve. No longer would she mask her ambition. Arriving at the co-working space, Mia's heart raced not with anxiety but exhilaration. She had a plan, and plans demanded execution. Her first task, reach out to a mentor. Navigating past the rows of busy professionals, she settled into her usual corner, the familiar hum of industrious souls fortifying her. She opened her laptop and inhaled deeply. Time to confront those trepidations. Selecting a name from her list, she crafted an email addressed to a senior executive known for her environmental initiatives. Mia pressed keys deliberately, every sentence a declaration of her aspirations. Would she manage to convey her passion? Each word she typed felt like a step into the unknown, and the further she went, the more she sensed the sting of vulnerability blossoming into courage. After hitting send, a rush of adrenaline followed by uncertainty took hold. What if the email remained unanswered? What if her lackluster experience meant dismissal? Simply waiting wasn't an option. Mia decided to shift gears and invest her energy into her sustainability proposal. She wanted it not only to be relevant but groundbreaking. The hours turned into pockets of determination as she researched, crafting points that threaded her passion for the cause into the proposal. Each statistic, each concept urged her to push boundaries. The dread that enveloped her earlier was now replaced by fierce conviction. This was her moment. There was no room for second-guessing, and each line she wrote felt like laying the bricks of her future, but moments of clarity can be fleeting. As she reached the final details, doubts crept in once more. The world could be brutal, and critiques could cut deep. What if Ralph's cautionary words echoed true in her reality? Could her project truly face the scrutiny of a corporate board wielding power? Anxiety twisted in her stomach. Would her first foray into this elevated sphere result in failure? Breathless, she leaned back, allowing the weight of uncertainty to wash over her. But amid the turmoil, the reflection of her morning mantra no more running reverberated in her mind. She realized those doubts didn't define her, nor did they erase the efforts she had devoted. Gathering her focus, she put pen to paper not to write excuses, but to formulate a plan. She envisioned designing a presentation that embraced the challenges and underscored her passion. Despite the potential obstacles, she could create a compelling narrative that drove her message home. Completing her proposal, she felt a surge of pride. A new dilemma loomed: she needed to present her project to her team for feedback. To face their judgments head-on. The thought electrified her, igniting both fear and raw excitement. This was the ultimate test, the raw confrontation of her vulnerabilities with a group that defined the apex of their industry. With her chest swelling from a concoction of fear and thrill, Mia arose and squared her shoulders, making her way to the conference room. The tension felt palpable, filled with unanswered questions. Would they engage with her ideas? Would they honor her passion? Or would it all come crashing down? Affirming Ralph's words, through the door, she peered at familiar faces, some eager, some skeptical. She repeated her mantra silently, letting it bolster her as she stepped into their world, ready to face whatever awaited her. The moment had arrived where she would confront not only the external judgments, but the internal barriers that had long held her captive. What awaited her in that room could redefine everything. Could she turn this moment into a launching pad for her ambitions? Or would it be another instance of unrequited bravery? The answers felt like threads dangling precariously before her. What would she weave? Mia stepped confidently onto the stage of her life, determined to define her own narrative not just for herself, but for the world. After facing Ralph and reclaiming her private struggles in front of the diner's patrons, she had created an exhilarating momentum that propelled her forward into uncharted waters. This was her moment of transition from merely surviving to truly thriving. With her sustainable project proposal polished, she felt a newfound sense of ownership and excitement. Each detail reflected her core beliefs, embodied her passion for the environment, and channeled both her challenges and triumphs into tangible solutions. No longer would she be just a waitress confined behind the counter. She was now a burgeoning professional, prepared to share her vision with colleagues who had once seemed so distant. When the time came for the team meeting, her nerves were palpable, but now they thrummed with the anticipation of possibility. As she entered the conference room, the sunlight filtering through the blinds felt almost like a spotlight. She was ready to face the scrutiny that had once paralyzed her. Mia took a deep breath, grounding herself in the gravity of the moment, and began. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady. "Today, I want to share a project that I believe could redefine our approaches to sustainability within our organization." As she launched into her presentation, the hesitance that lingered within her evaporated. Each point resonated with clarity and conviction. Ideas flowed from her lips like an unstoppable river, a force of change that demanded attention. Her colleagues listened attentively, the atmosphere thickening with intrigue. When she reached the core of her proposal, highlighting a SWOT analysis that she had meticulously framed, their animated expressions reflected genuine engagement. This was no longer her voice trembling from fear, it was powerful, ushering in her ideas with confidence. Questions arose, not to undermine her but to deepen the dialogue. She felt the confidence swell within her as she navigated the discussions effortlessly, her mind a tapestry of information woven from countless nights of hard work and preparation. With each successful answer, she dismantled the walls of doubt that had previously loomed over her. By the end of the meeting, something remarkable happened. The team elected her to lead the initiative, recognizing her ability to illuminate a path forward. Mia received applause not just for her proposal, but for the authentic struggle she embodied. They had seen her journey, and in that moment, she felt a surge of acknowledgement mending the fractured pieces of her self-esteem. As she exited the conference room, her heart raced, enveloped not in fear, but in triumph. She had not only articulated her vision, she had conquered her inner critic, the echo of Ralph fading into the background. The potential for her leadership was vast, opportune, and now something she could call her own. Later that afternoon, she took a moment to reflect as she gazed out the window of the cafe. It wasn't merely the world outside that had transformed, it was her perspective. She recognized the strength that had unfurled within her, the shift from apprehension to empowerment that would forever shape her endeavors. The road ahead would surely be challenging, but that was the beauty of it. She had learned to embrace the unknown, to see hardship as a crucible for growth rather than a barrier to it. And with this evolved sense of self, her goals were no longer dreams, they were missions waiting to be pursued. Moreover, her relationship with James blossomed. They had forged a connection that was rich with mutual respect and understanding, each inspired by the weight of their experiences and driven by their ambitions. James reached out to her often, showering her with encouragement as they collaborated on professional endeavors and shared their visions of the future. "Thank you for believing in me," she said to him one evening as they reflected on their progress over coffee. This genuine moment solidified her understanding that vulnerability had laid the foundation for authentic connections. As Mia walked home, the setting sun draped the streets in a golden hue, a fitting send-off for a day marked by victory. Her heart swelled not just with a fleeting sense of success but with solid confidence in her capabilities. She had transcended the role of waitress, grounding herself firmly in the realm of empowered professional. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself, "I will continue to build on this momentum." Mia realized she had not only achieved a personal feat but had also arrived at a deeper fulfillment. She was becoming the architect of her own story. Now, with a heart full of ambition and arms open to embrace life's challenges, she stepped further into her future, ready to navigate whatever came next. This was the moment where transformation unfurled into reality, and she resolved to meet it head-on, including every exciting possibility along the way. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, and this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share these powerful messages of personal overcoming.